Hey guys, this is Simon. I'm not feeling super great today because I caught a cold and I didn't want to record my face, like my actual real face, so I decided to do one of those podcasty things I sometimes do, and hopefully you'll find this topic interesting or maybe even educational or whatnot. But today I wanted to talk to you about being LGBTQIA+ in Russia, because if you didn't know, or don't recognize from my accent, I am Russian. I've lived all my life in Russia, and I have some thoughts, you know what I'm saying? I have some questions to our government, and I don't know, I'm pretty bitter about the situation in Russia. And if you're not familiar with what's happening there, I just wanted to let you know and just share my experiences and experiences of other people who I read about in different articles affected by the situation in Russia, and kind of talk about some things that are very important to me, in hopes that one day I can look back on this video and be like, oh, thank God that's over. I think one of the main questions that a lot of people have for Russian gay people or trans people or queer people is, do you feel safe? How does it work? You know, because Russia is known for being quite conservative, quite toxic, and the society is, you know, not super progressive, I would say. Although I did live most of my life, or all my life, in Moscow, which is the capital of Russia, and Moscow and St. Petersburg are two cities that are the most progressive, I would think. I can't really talk about how it feels or how the situation is in the other parts of Russia. I've been in a long-distance relationship with Erin for the past 2.5 years. Since we were in a long-distance relationship, we didn't really spend a lot of time, you know, walking around the streets holding hands or like kissing, since Erin's been in Russia only 2 times. So when they're not here, not that I'm not openly gay or openly queer, it's like I don't have anyone to be gay with on the streets, you know what I'm saying? When you're outside as a queer or gay or trans person, you just need to follow certain rules, which is not ideal, but you will be a lot safer if you do. So for instance, knowing which areas you shouldn't go in at night, knowing to avoid groups of drunken men because they could beat you up or something like that. That's the reality of a lot of countries, and that's the reality of Russia as well. The way the gay propaganda law affects relationships outside, like in the streets, is that they're basically saying you can do whatever you want to do behind closed doors, but when you're outside, don't do anything. Like, don't show your gayness. And that, of course, is dehumanizing, and that, of course, is painful, and it does not help with normalization of gay relationships, which Russia so desperately needs. And then the way the law actually affects LGBT people on the internet is even worse. Usually if you don't have a pretty big influence and you just post some pictures or kiss on Instagram or whatever with your partner, it is fine. But if you have any sort of bigger influence, or if you are an activist, if you have like a bigger channel, for instance, if someone notices you, you could be in trouble. There was a situation quite recently. I don't know if you've ever seen those YouTube videos where kids go to meet different kinds of people. Like, for instance, the kids could meet someone, people of different professions, like an artist or a musician, and they can meet people who are neurodiverse or disabled, and those are nice channels, you know. And there was a Russian channel like that, and I never watched it because I don't really watch Russian YouTube that much. They wanted to make an episode where kids would meet a gay person. I think it was a gay man. And again, Nothing, like no propaganda, because what is propaganda? Like, you can't change your orientation, so how can you promote anything? Anyway, sorry, I just emotional. So they made the episode, and I think it got to someone's Twitter, or it got to the news. The government or whoever's responsible, they closed their channel, and the guys who made the video are looking at fees and jail time or something because of the gay propaganda law. That's the crime. It's just ridiculous things like that make it so hard to be okay with what's happening in Russia. The gay propaganda law is basically government stopping the normalization of any sort of LGBTQI plus people, relationships, communities, to ostracize them, to make them feel abnormal, and to not give them a chance to be recognized by the rest of the society, who is predominantly cis and straight. It also makes it impossible for the gay community or the LGBTQI community to gain support, because as you can imagine, LGBTQI centers are illegal because they promote homosexuality or whatever, or non-traditional values. And that is one of the worst parts, because you can imagine a kid, you can imagine a teenager. Okay, right now there is like internet and stuff like that, but it completely erases representation. So a kid or a teenager who perhaps doesn't have access to, I don't know, English media or foreign media, they don't see themselves in books, they don't see themselves in movies, cartoons, they don't see any characters anywhere that resemble how they feel, who are like them. If there is, say, a movie coming out with a main gay person or main gay character, the movie, if they still want to, if the Russian government is like, okay, we'll show this movie, it will be heavily edited or shown during some obnoxious hours, like really late at night when no teenager can go and watch it. So for instance, the Elton John biopic, they cut out all of the gay scenes. Elton John is gay. It's big part of his journey, his biography, because he struggled and it was hard, and sometimes great art comes from pain, but not always. I'm just saying, don't be in pain, just do art. And it's just, what, even like at the end of the movie, because Elton John is shown as such a lonely person, at the end of the movie there's like a little card that says that he's found his husband and he's happy and he has kids now. Even that was cut out. There was no kissing, there was no promotion of homosexuality. They just said this lonely person who felt so horrible his entire life, or in so many periods of his life, he finally found happiness, and they were like, cutting that out. I don't know, it makes me so sad. I don't know if you've been watching the UK RuPaul Drag Race season 1, but there was an episode where Davina De Campo, she talked about a similar issue, because in the 1988, Margaret Thatcher introduced the Section 28, which was basically the same as gay propaganda law, because it banned the promotion of homosexuality. So it's kind of happening all over again. It's like a circle, and they always make it seem like, oh, we're just trying to preserve the traditional values. Oh, how I hate the traditional values, my guys. Oh no, it's my biggest nemesis. just everything that is happening in Russia right now, and I bet was happening back in 1988 in the UK, is all just covered in those traditional value conservative mindsets. And so Davina was talking about growing up with Section 2028 and said it just erased people completely. And it is what it does. Thankfully now, unlike in 1988, most kids, most teenagers have access to the internet. Although parents do often limit their access to certain websites, and all of those gay propaganda laws make it harder and harder to gain information you'd want in a safe space like an LGBT center, which it could be could have an educational page, or just like you're okay, you're normal, it's all fine page, And so if you do not have access to international media, or you don't know English, for instance, it's a lot harder to find that representation, and you have to search for it. You have to actively search it out. You have to actively go out there and spend hours researching, and because there's nothing on TV, on Russian TV, there is absolutely nothing. No representation of LGBTQI people, and no representation of LGBTQI people in music, in Russian books, and in movies and TV series. And then you can imagine how hard it can be seeing no reflection of yourself in anything that is happening. In fact, you see the opposite, because my dad watches TV every evening during dinner, and we'll all sit together and I hear what they're saying, and it's such a toxic and horrible approach. And even me, like, I'm already, standing firmly on my feet. I know who I am. I understand my gender identity. I am at peace with my gender identity and orientation. I have a person who I love and who loves me. I have a huge, chunk of support. I don't want to call my friends chunk, but you know what I mean. And still, even it bothers me. I can't imagine. And I came out, all of my friends know, and my mom knows, and whatever, the entire internet knows. Tumblr has gifs of us kissing. Anyway, even my heart hurts when I hear all those things they say. I can't imagine how horrible dinner time is for kids who are closeted, who don't know where to turn because maybe they're introverted or shy, or they don't have a lot of friends they can share this with, or they're scared and they live not in Moscow, but they live somewhere out there in Yakutia or whatnot. There was this segment on TV last time. I had to listen to it while we were having dinner, where a Russian commentator was talking about the presidential candidates for the US presidential candidates, talking to different people. And the segment was about Elizabeth Warren and a trans boy whose name is Jacob, who came up to the mic and said something along the lines of, what would you as a new president do for young trans kids like myself? A very good question. Seeing how things are right now with Trump. Jacob, good job. But immediately the Russian commentator just exploded with hatred, with misgenderings, with trashing Jacob's mom for letting Jacob identify the way he identifies. And it was so horrible. And if you are subjected to this every day, if you watch this every day, then like my dad and mom, and you're like conservative as you are, how are you supposed to change? How is anything in your mind supposed to change or grow or expand? How, if constantly on TV before you go to sleep, you hear things like gay Europe, they are bad, they're like AIDS, this, that, trans people are abnormal, and there are no in Russia, and it's all illegal because gay propaganda law, and we like talk to them about them in a tone that's like it's almost as if we like can't handle how gross it all is, then how are you supposed to go beyond that and to change yourself? Because when I came out to my mom, and I think I talked about this in some of the other podcasts, or maybe not, I don't know. My mom cried. She thought it was a tragedy because it's illegal. You know what else is illegal? Drugs, murder, theft. Those aren't nice things you want your kid to dabble in. So homosexuality or, being queer or whatever, it is a tragedy to her. And it is a disgrace to my dad. There's so many, I don't know, I don't even know, I have some notes here and I don't know where to look at because they're all horrible. And I read all those articles about, kids being threatened by heads of universities for being in like gay groups on social media, and how they're being called abnormal and a disgrace to the university, and the hypocrisy of it all, and how those old men and women too, but mostly men, they cover themselves up in this group of traditional values, and they think it's okay to drop a student out of university who is doing just fine on like exams and everything else for just being a part of like an LGBT group on Facebook or whatever. Those are real articles that I read every day. There is an anti-LGBT group called Saw, yes, like the horror movie Saw, who are threatening LGBT activists and public figures with death. When an LGBT activist was killed near her house, they said they took the responsibility for it, and police did nothing. Because police is part of the government that I talked about. It's part of the system. It's like a horror movie. Some people aren't even activists who are threatened by them. Some are just makeup artists, like guys who do makeup on YouTube. They get so much hate already, but apart from that, they also get death threats because they do makeup. And toxic masculinity as a part of the system is like a huge part of this whole system. Traditional values, toxic masculinity, gender stereotypes, all of them play a huge part in this whole system. And my government, Russian government, supports all of it. Sometimes I can't even read articles, to be honest. And sometimes I like to talk about them if I do read them with my sister, and she just says, no, I just can't. Please don't tell me what's going on. It's like easier to stay blind and deaf towards what's happening sometimes, but it's just ridiculous because we're going back in time. Because Section 28 was in 1988. The gay propaganda law was in 2013 and is still active to this day, and they don't seem to want to get rid of it. And I'm not even going to talk about, although it is a huge part of the whole question of LGBT people in Russia, it's Chechnya, which is the Chechen Republic. If you don't know, it's a federal subject of Russia. And there have been articles and news about gay people being tortured and put in jails for being gay. Chechen police would come up to men they supposed were gay, or in some way found out were gay, but via social media, and they would torture them to give up names of other gay people or put them to jail and maybe kill them, because you don't know. Not a lot of people can escape that place, because if you try to run away, and if you try to run away to Europe, you will very likely cause distress to your family, because this is how Chechen Republic works. If you run away, they will come to your family, and no one would want that. Even though your family probably disowned you if you were gay anyway. It's just, my heart is just boiling when I read this kind of stuff. Yeah, and I'll just throw the name of the head of Chechen Republic here. His name is Ramzan Kadyrov, and he's an actual monster who supports all of it. And Putin supports it too. I mean, he is blind to everything that's happening, or says so. Like, oh, nothing's happening, Russia's great. Oh, shut up. It just sickens me. So many things tied into all of their traditional values. There's like a huge, it's not even an LGBT issue, it's the domestic violence. We don't have a law for domestic violence, and women are killed almost every day by their husbands in different parts of Russia. And it's just all, no, we don't need domestic violence law, because traditional values, it's just a part of a family, and there's so many stereotypes that support that. Like, oh, men will be men, he beats you because he loves you. He's jealous because he loves you, and paranoid because he is so much in love with you. I just can't stand it. Traditional values get promoted, and so domestic violence is normalized, and gender stereotypes get normalized, and domestic violence comes from gender stereotypes in many ways, and toxic masculinity is normalized. But what is never normalized is just people loving other people. You can't watch Call Me By Your Name in the cinema, but you can watch any other movie where they have murder and drugs and, blood, gore. And, if there is no normalization, it just leads to isolation, and it leads to hate, and it leads to fear. Because if your government tells you it's very bad all the time, and if you trust your government, then yeah, sounds about right. If, for instance, Russian government changed their stance, because most European governments that spoke out about this law were like, this is discrimination, you can't do this, and we won't accept you until you have normal people laws and not this garbage. If only they changed their stance, if only, I want to live till the day when Putin's like, actually, LGBTQIA people are normal and good and just like everyone else, and here have some gay marriage, and here have some trans people protection laws, and here have this and this and this, then my mom would have been fine when I came out. It comes full circle. It all depends on each other. And I've been talking about gay issues the entire podcast, because it's even worse for trans people, and non-binary people don't exist in Russia, so that's always been fun. We have an amazingly gender language where everything has a gender. Every noun, a fork is a lady, a knife is a man, and every adjective has a gendered ending, and every verb has a gendered ending. So, it's, for me, as a non-binary person, it's pretty much impossible to live free of dysphoria. There's certain places where you're supposed to feel safe and taken care of, like home or at the doctors, the clinic, were the worst time for me, dysphoria-wise. I don't have a really nice and fun conclusion. I guess internet really helps, because imagine all of this without the internet. It would be just... I recently read an article about how people who were gay were treated in the USSR times, and boy, that's a whole separate podcast. At least we have internet and all of that international representation to help us feel normal and fine. So yeah, I don't know what to leave you with. I don't want to leave you with this kind of super negative outlook and dreadful feeling that you probably have right now. It's better than it used to be. I really hope it's gonna keep getting better. I really hope for some visibility for Russia. I really hope that soon, like Section 28, the gay propaganda law, will be done with forever. I know happy gay couples who live in Moscow and St. Petersburg. I'm really proud that Russia has really great LGBT activists, and they're doing their best, and I really believe that it's gonna get better. Maybe in a year or two I will make a second podcast like this and everything would change by then, because how could it stay the same? How can we keep going back in time? So if you are a Russian person and you are part of the LGBTQIA+, let's just hope, and support each other, which is very important. That's why we have the internet. Yeah, reach out to me if you need to. We'll figure it out. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.